For many years, the new Super Mario Bros. Series was held in a very negative light. Ask any reviewer at the time of their release, and they would probably cross their arms and tell you they're the worst games ever made. And then go complain about modern SpongeBob or something. But seeing as I grew up with the new Super Mario Bros. Series, I personally have a lot of attachment to it. That even goes for new Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, which is often seen as the weakest entry. But I'm here to tell you guys, it's better than Wonder. Okay, well obviously the main game for Super Mario Bros. Wonder is pretty good, but it is missing my favorite feature from NSMBU, the challenge mode. This was outside of the main campaign and provided several different challenges for the players to complete. These could be time trials, coin-based, one-up-based, or special challenges. In my opinion, this is the best content the 2D Mario series pretty much ever got, and a lot of these challenges were actually quite hard. That's especially the case if you tried to get a gold medal on each one, as some require pretty precise movement. When I was younger, I probably sunk more time into this mode alone than the entirety of Mario Bros. Wonder. Because I'm terrible at video games.
I can't do it, I can't take it!
That's why I was pretty devastated to not see it return, as I think it's a fantastic way to add some content to the 2D Mario series. Well, at least I would be sad had it not been for the reveal of Mario Wonder Switch 2 Edition. Not only is this adding a ton of multiplayer games that I'll never play since I don't have friends, we're also getting another side mode that seems to be a revival of sorts of the new Super Mario Bros. U challenges. They definitely seem to be at least a little different, but it looks like the same general ideas in place. But before that releases on March 26th, I thought it would be fun to take a look at what we had in NSMBU Deluxe. Then once the DLC is released, we can compare the two to see which challenge mode is actually the best. In New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, there are 67 challenges between the 4 different categories. But with so many challenges, some are bound to be worse than others, so today I'm gonna rank all of the NSMBU Deluxe challenges from the worst to the best. I'll be judging them based on how creative the challenge is, how difficult it is, and of course, how fun it is to complete. Generally, I like harder challenges, but there are a few good ones with lower difficulty ratings. I'll also be judging all of these from the perspective of getting a gold medal, which is a pretty important distinction to make as it makes a lot of these challenges much harder. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to Odyssey, I think you're forgetting the boost mode challenges in the original Wii U. There are no boost mode challenges in NSMBU Deluxe. But Odyssey. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let's jump right in. Alright, I know I said that I generally like harder challenges, but I get one that annoys me, okay? 67, Penguin vs. Torpedo. Before we get into this segment, each of my numbers will be color-coded based on the challenge type, just like in the game itself. So blue is for time trial, yellow will be for coin, green for one-up, and red for special. So that makes this our first time-based challenge, and the reason I find it so annoying is because I hate swimming.
I am under the water. Please help me.
This is the only fully underwater challenge in the entire game, so right away that was gonna put it on my hate list, but the water isn't even really the bad thing here. We're given the penguin suit to help make water movement a little better, though I personally don't enjoy it much more than swimming normally. The issue here are all of the torpedo Teds. These freaks keep filling up the screen and making it incredibly annoying to maneuver. Based on how you swim through the course, they're gonna fire at different times, which makes their patterns somewhat unpredictable. So most of the time you do this challenge, you're gonna get stuck behind a massive wall of torpedoes, which move too slowly for you to get a gold medal. Trying to get around the torpedoes is also a nightmare since you have to do it quickly enough to not lose any time. You also can't damage boost, as losing the penguin suit is an automatic fail. What sucks even more about that is if you get hit, for some reason, the game doesn't let you quickly pause and reset. You have to instead sit through the entire death animation, which takes much longer, giving you plenty of time to sit with your misery. What I ended up doing was trying to use the ice balls to get the torpedo Teds to break each other. This would then open up a hole in the torpedo wall and let me get past. This was a lot more finicky than it sounds though, especially since you have to be pretty on point with your timing for it to work. Overall, this is the challenge that took me by far the longest to get a gold medal on my first playthrough, which is pretty shocking seeing as this is only a 3-star challenge. The difficulty ratings go up to 5 stars, so I'm either exceptionally bad at swimming, or they should have upped this one's rating. Either way, I'm happy to never return to it. 66, Cloud Top Coin Evasion. This is another 3-star challenge, but instead of being annoyingly difficult, it's annoyingly boring. This is our first coin challenge, and it requires us to get through the course without touching any coins. Now that may seem difficult due to the sheer amount of them flying by, but if you just duck on the main platform, literally none of them can reach you. Since this is pretty much an auto-scroll level 2, this whole thing is basically just about waiting. There are a few parts of land and some enemies that you have to jump over, but not enough to make this challenging literally at all. The worst part is definitely the length, as it's also one of the longest challenges in the entire game. At least due to how easy it is, you'll probably only have to go through this once, but if you do slip up, that can be extremely annoying. 65, Time Attack Trial. Now we're getting into the challenges that are just low on the list since they're super easy. This is the very first challenge in the game, so it makes sense to keep it simple to introduce the concept. Pretty much all you have to do to get a gold medal here is hold forward, and there are barely any obstacles in your way. This definitely deserves to place low. 64, the Goombrat Stomp. This is the first 1-up mission in the game and on this list. All you have to do is jump on all 8 Goombrats without touching the ground. This is literally the simplest 1-up challenge they could have done, but it makes sense to introduce the concept. Plus it does take a little more effort to land the jumps here than the previous challenge on the list. 63, Triple Jump for Coins. You're not gonna believe it, but this is the first challenge in the coin menu. The reason this is above the last 2 starters is because it does feel pretty good to collect all the coins while triple jumping. I also find this to be a very helpful tutorial since I could see some players not knowing about the triple jump before this. 62, Acorn Plain Speedrun. It's gonna be a bit until we see the first of the special category, so we're moving back to the time section for now. This just requires the player to speedrun through the game's first level. Obviously this is a bit more involved than the first speedrun, but it's not too much harder. You can still mostly get away with just holding forward here, though there are a bit more course elements to take note of. Namely, slopes can slow Mario down or speed him up, so it's important to utilize them well. There are also a couple waddling that can jump scare you if you aren't careful. 61, Stingy Big Piranha Plants. This challenge requires the player to not touch any coins, and while that may seem hard at first, keep in mind that this is a coin challenge and not a timer challenge. If you just take your time, it's really not difficult at all to just wait for the piranha plants to move away from the coins. This challenge is fun to try and do fast though, so that does let it place above our last few. 60, Full Speed Ahead. Moving up to a 2-star difficulty speedrun, and I don't really think it feels much harder. This has an even stronger emphasis on slopes though, so making sure to slide down each one of them is important. The rolling hills are also a nice addition, but don't really make this crazy unique. 59, Be Gentle to Giants. Finally, we have our first challenge from the special category. However, this is not the first one in the game. This is actually another 3-star difficulty, but I think the only thing getting tested here is my patience. The goal is to reach the flag without damaging any enemies. While that may seem like an interesting challenge, remember, this isn't a timer challenge. You can wait pretty much as long as you want for the enemies to simply move out of the way. Emphasis on the word long. So yeah, this challenge is really just a lot of waiting, but I will give it a bit more credit than something like Cloud Top Coin Evasion. At least you have the option to go fast if you want, and even while going slow, there can be some difficult jumps. The idea behind this challenge also isn't bad, it's just in need of better execution. Also, as another small point against this challenge, the NSMBU devs were obsessed with this level. While not every challenge is based on a level from the main game, a few of them, including this one, are. This is the level 5-1 or Jungle of the Giants. Whereas most levels do not get a single challenge based off of them, 5-1 gets 3. This is absurd levels of greed. 58, Goomba Bounce Bash. This is our first of many challenges to utilize the Super Acorn. Obviously, being this game's new power-up, it makes total sense to be the focus of a lot of challenges. The goal here is to obtain 40 1-ups by jumping on Goombas bouncing off clouds. This is a fairly fun idea, and the way the Goombas jump can possibly throw you off sometimes. The biggest issue I have is that I feel like the challenge goes on for a bit long, but it's still decently enjoyable. If you want, you can even keep going past 40 1-ups to try and get a higher score. 57, Graceful Glide. For this special challenge, you have to get 5 1-ups and reach the goal without touching the ground. Now my first thought seeing this challenge is, why is it not a 1-up? Huh? It feels kind of weird to put this in the special category, especially since special has the most challenges with 21 total and the 1-up section only has 10. Well, whatever, this also uses the Super Acorn and I find this to be a bit more interesting than the last one as you actually have to fly around a bit more varied terrain. That element of being less repetitive makes me want to come back to this one more, and I'm also a little surprised that this is actually a 1-star rating instead of something like a 2. It's not really that hard, but it feels a bit harder than a lot of the other 1-stars. 56, Hot Hidden Coin Hunt. This just has a really good idea behind it. Mario is required to hit a P-switch, and you have to collect all of the coins as fast as you can before the timer expires. To get gold, Mario needs to collect every single one. The timer is a bit tighter than you might think, and getting the coins up in the corners does require some trickier jumps. Still not insanely hard or anything, but I think it works well as a coin challenge. 55, Lakitu's Cloud Heist. Like the last challenge, this requires Mario to collect as many coins as possible before some sort of time limit expires. In this case, it's collecting coins before Lakitu's cloud disappears. It's fun to use Lakitu's Cloud for a challenge like this, and while the controls are easy, there is a decent chance that a coin may slip past you. I also like that the circles of coins are rotating, so it feels a bit quicker to collect them. What's interesting about this challenge is that you actually don't need to get all the coins to get a gold here. You need to collect 140 of the 149 coins, making this have one of the biggest wiggle rooms of all the coin gold medals. Personally, I think I would have preferred a little bit less wiggle room to make this harder, but it's fine as is. 54 Stone Eye Koopas. While getting footage for this video, this was the only 1-star challenge that gave me any trouble.
Don't make fun of me.
That's because the timer here is a bit stricter than I was expecting. To get a gold medal, Squirrel Mario needs to get 30 1-ups by bouncing off a bunch of paratroopas. Now that may seem impossible, but luckily Koopas come out of their shells after a few seconds, so pretty much all you have to do is loop back and forth between the Koopas while stalling enough time for them to pop out. Now the reason that I initially failed was because I was stalling for way longer than necessary, so I ended up not being able to get all 30 lives before the time limit expired. Just don't hold the glide for too long and you should be totally fine. 53 Spin Jump Get Dizzy. This challenge requires Mario to get 14 1-ups while spin jumping. Okay, this definitely should have been a 1-up challenge. It's kinda cool that the spin jump gets a focus here, but I didn't love it myself just because the controls felt kinda wacky. Probably because I don't use the spin jump very much unless I'm playing Mario Maker, but moving between the enemies here just didn't feel very satisfying to me. There were a few pretty tricky jumps though, and I could see someone getting enjoyment out of this, so I won't bring it down too low. 52 Fire Bro.
Say that again?
This is not only our last 1-star challenge on the list, but also the last of our starter challenges. I think this kicked off the special category very well, requiring us to jump in place over some Fire Bros fireballs for as long as possible. What's nice about this challenge is the fact that the Fire Bros move randomly, so it'll actually change every time you come back. Obviously being a 1-star challenge is not too difficult, but it's pretty fun jumping each of the fireballs. 51 3 Dry Bones. This challenge's title is pretty much exactly what you get here. Obviously, Dry Bones is my goat, so it pains me to say that we have to hurt him for this challenge. Look at those cute faces, how could you be so cruel? The goal is to get 30 1-ups, and this challenge does a good job highlighting Dry Bones' revive mechanic. A few seconds after you knock them down, they'll wake back up again, so the whole point of this challenge is about stalling for them to do so. I think that could be pretty fun, especially if you get creative with your wall jumps and ground pound cancels. It does have a bit of the problem we saw in Gooba Bounce Bash where it gets repetitive, but since this one is more tense, I find it to be more forgivable. 50 Hot Air Yoshi Ride. This one is more unique when it comes to the coin challenges, as your medal is based on how long it takes you to collect all the coins. To do so, you have to use a pink baby Yoshi, which was another big new element of this game. Due to the pink Yoshi deflating after a certain period of time, this challenge does require a bit of routing to properly execute. 49 Stone Eye Desert Dash. We return to another speedrun of one of the game's main courses, this time being the one to feature them. While it is a pretty basic speedrun without any crazy additional rules, I just think this course's layout lends itself quite well to the speedrun setting. Trying to jump on the slope Moai in just the right way to save the most amount of time is pretty fun, and I love the sand geysers near the end being perfectly timed to go along with your jumps. 48 Lurchin Urchins. All things considered, this is a pretty straightforward speedrun course, but I love jumping past all the giant urchins here. The way the water geysers bring them right up to Mario's feet feels perfectly tense, even if just holding forward is mostly all you have to worry about here. The hardest part of the course is definitely getting past this geyser in the middle. To get a gold here, you have to get past it without swimming, so you have to squeeze into this really tight gap. It feels pretty great to jump at just the right height to get through, so I think that adds quite a bit to the speedrun. 47 No Climbing Allowed, and 46 Bowser's Airship Sneak. I'm putting these two together because they share a very similar concept, basically just requiring Mario to survive to the end of an auto-scroller. Now normally that wouldn't be that interesting, but each of these have unique secondary mechanics that make them a bit scarier. No Climbing Allowed, shockingly, bans you from climbing. So to survive here, you have to use Mini Mario's physics to avoid all of the falling meteors. This does get pretty tricky, especially near the end. As for Bowser's Airship Sneak, you are banned from touching both coins and enemies. In my opinion, that makes this a little bit harder than No Climbing Allowed. I do think both are held back because they're auto-scrollers, but at least they're not mind-numbingly easy auto-scrollers. 45 Dark Dart Coaster. This challenge can be mildly annoying because, as the name suggests, it's in the dark. Since this is about grabbing all the coins on the way, that can actually make seeing the coins in time a bit tricky. This challenge is helped by the fact that it's on a skull coaster, which are always a lot of fun whenever they show up. Even if seeing the coins in time is tricky, managing to snag them all while moving super fast does feel pretty satisfying. This course is also so generous as it gives you one single coin of wiggle room if you're gonna go for gold. I think for this challenge I do appreciate that, as it makes the darkness slightly less annoying without taking off too much of the difficulty. 44 Penguin Bowling. Finally we get a good challenge with the penguin suit as we get to kill people. This shows off a rarely seen mechanic where you can get 1-ups by chaining several kills together in one penguin slide. I just found it very satisfying to mow down all the Koopas in one go. It's not a very hard challenge, but a fun one nonetheless. 43. Ghost House Coin Curse. This is sort of an expanded version of Hot Hidden Coin Hunt we saw earlier in the list. We still have to try and collect all the coins under a P-switch timer, but now it's a bit trickier since the timer feels tighter and you have to move between 2 different layers. It feels really good running and jumping through all the coins, and I still think this is a great idea for a challenge. This does have quite a bit of wiggle room though, as there are 156 coins here, but you only need 150 to gold. Now I don't think it's possible to get all 156 since you do need to ground pound at least 1 brick block to get to the bottom layer, but 5 coins of wiggle room is still quite a lot. I think that does hold this challenge back a bit, but not enough to make me dislike it or anything. 42. Icicle Skating. For being just a 2-star speedrun challenge, I like it quite a bit. I think a lot of that comes from me thinking ice levels are pretty cool. The slippery physics mixed with the slopes help make this run feel a whole lot quicker. I especially love all of the areas with the falling icicles, even if you probably won't run into them as long as you're holding forward. This is a pretty easy challenge, which is to be expected with its lower difficulty rating, but the vibes are great here. 41. Waddle Wing Wipeout. This is one of the more unique coin challenges, as not only do you have to collect every coin here, you have to commit murder. On your way down the tower, you have to take out every waddle wing that gets in the way. While I don't think this is super hard to accomplish, it is fun having a secondary objective to complete while collecting coins. You can make this a lot easier on yourself as well if you take your time, but that also makes rushing through it feel even more fun. 40. Big Air at Sundown. This forces Mario to use the mini mushroom's floaty physics to beat snaking above Mist Valley without using snake blocks. I feel like the challenge mode really allows for the mini mushroom's unique mechanics to shine, and this is a pretty fun showcase of what it can do. The main thing that's holding this back for me is the fact that there's not any sort of timer. The jumps aren't too difficult to make here, so if you just take your time, this challenge isn't really that hard at all. If you had to rush through this to get a gold medal, I think I would have liked it more, but as is, it's still pretty good. 39. Perilous Coin Dodge. This takes us through part of 7-3 where we have to avoid collecting any coins. Usually I like these challenges a bit more than the ones where we have to collect coins, as it feels a lot scarier trying to make your way through the course. In this case, the coins are often placed exactly where Mario would have to jump, which means you have to really wiggle your way around them. None of the jumps are exceptionally hard, but a few do require some thought on what the best way to go about them is. 38. Marathon Glide. 5-1 returns to give us a much more interesting concept for a challenge. We have to basically do the exact opposite of the last one, as instead of not touching any enemies, we now have to bounce off of them to reach the goal without touching the ground. While this would normally not be possible, we're given a super acorn to help us out here. I like this way more than the first 5-1 challenge because you have to keep moving. The glide won't last forever, so you have to make quick decisions in order to stay in the air. It's not too difficult as it's only a 2-star challenge, but I still found going through this course quite fun. 37. Non-stop Flight. Pretty much just a harder version of the last challenge, as we have much smaller things to jump on and way more obstacles to avoid. The vertical spike enemies work really well to make this glide intense, and the Hucket Crab rocks are a good difficult enemy to bounce off of. Add on that this is an original course instead of just 5-1 again, and I think this is clearly better. 36. Boo Ballet Encore, and 35. Boo Ballet. There are a couple challenges that have multiple versions, and I think these two are the most similar multi-challenges. For both of these, you have to try and reach the end by running through 4 different boo rings. To get the gold here, you pretty much have to hold forward the entire time, and I think that makes the challenge pretty scary, as you really have to squeeze into the gaps between the boos. I always find doing that really satisfying though, in both this challenge and just Mario games in general. It feels like a built-in speed trick instead of having to wait for the hole in the ring to be in the right spot. As for their order here, I honestly find the first one to be a bit better since Small Mario has a bigger hitbox than Mini Mario. 34. Bubble Up. This challenge acts as a bit of subtle foreshadowing to the bubble flower in Super Mario Bros. Wonder. The main appeal of that power-up is the fact that you can jump on the bubbles you fire out, and that's exactly what you have to do here with this blue baby Yoshi. Since its bubbles will flow upwards after a bit, you have to use Mini Mario to jump between them and reach the top of the area. This is a super creative idea and feels great to execute. I do think it maybe could have used a time limit for the medals, as this is one of the challenges that give you gold simply for completing it, but as is, it's already pretty great. 33. Molta Goal. This is one of the cutest challenges in this video. You have to ride on a raft alongside a Monty Mole. Now you can't kill the Monty Mole or else you'll fail the challenge. Instead, you have to try and bring it all the way to the end of the course. This can be slightly more challenging than it sounds, as Goombas will fall onto the platform, constantly causing it to stop. Mario then has to defeat the Goombas without accidentally jumping on the mole or causing it to slip off the edge. Now with that said, it's not really that difficult to do this since the course is quite short, but the idea is super charming, especially because they even gave Monty Mole a unique victory animation that I believe is only ever seen in challenge mode. There is luckily another challenge similar to this later, so I'll put this down here for now because it's a really cute idea. 32, Larry's Groundless Battle. This is the only challenge in the game to feature a boss fight. Larry is my dad's main in Mario Kart, hashtag Larry from Mario Kart, so it's cool that he gets to be the one they used here. The concept is pretty cool too, requiring Mario to only ever land on the water geysers and not the ground below. This makes the fight far more interesting as you sometimes have to stall and wait for the water to come back. Honestly, it makes me kinda sad they didn't somehow implement this for the actual fight, because even with Koopaling cheese, this is a decent challenge. 31, Elevator Out of Service. It's about time we finally reach our first 4-star difficulty challenge. As I said, I generally like the harder ones, so it makes sense for all of the difficult challenges to crack the top half of the list. Even if I found this water slop harder. Anyway, this challenge is unique as it's the only one to use the P acorn, and it does so in a creative way. The main ability of this power-up is that it gives you infinite glide boosts, and that's normally just used to completely cheat levels, but in this case, climbing a vertical tower is actually quite challenging. Normally you'd have a moving platform to help you, but now you have to dodge all of the obstacles with just the boost. Since there's no timer to worry about, I don't think this is as hard as it could be, but I like that they found some way to squeeze the P acorn into challenge mode. 30, Star Connection. This highlights the mechanic of using a star's invincibility to murder enemies and get 1-ups. I found the star a bit more interesting than the penguin suit for 2 reasons. For starters, the star has a timer, so you have to make sure you collect another star before it runs out. Secondly, the stage here is a lot more complex, requiring Mario to jump around and find enemies rather than just sliding in a straight line. So I think they utilized the star extremely well here. They very easily could have made it like a 7-year-old's first Mario Maker course. It maybe would have been nice if the star's timer was a bit more strict, but as is, I think it's difficult enough. Especially with those easy to miss paratroopers at the very end. 29, Bullet Bill 1-up Bounce. This one is all about finding a good rhythm. It's sort of like a few of the other 1-up challenges where you have to stall until you can jump on an enemy again, but now there are way less places to stall. You have to get a massive 60 1-ups here, but I also don't feel like it goes on for too long. Due to the way the bullets are fired out, it remains more stressful than some of the other endurance-based 1-up challenges. Once you find a good rhythm to jump on the bullet bills, it does feel quite natural, but getting that rhythm in the first place can be quite hard. 28, Rickety Sprint. There are a lot of tricky jumps in the speedrun using several different types of mushroom platforms. We start with the tilting mushrooms, which can mess with Mario's speed based on how they're sloped. That can also determine how you have to jump through 2 piranha plants at this section, which makes it all the scarier. The hardest part though definitely comes near the end with the fuzzies. The streaking mushrooms make the jumps quite difficult, and I certainly failed this a lot while getting footage for this video. But with all of that said, I do think this could have placed higher if it wasn't for one small thing. Near the halfway point of the course, there is a small bit where you have to wait on a tilting mushroom so you can move under a pipe. It may not seem like a lot, but I feel like it really interrupts the flow of an otherwise fast-moving speedrun course. I mean, it'd be like if I paused for a long time in the middle of a sentence. It just feels wrong on an otherwise pretty strong challenge. 27, Swing into Action. And now it's time we see our first 5-star challenge, which is the max difficulty. It's clear to see why that's the case here, as this speedrun uses a lot of different mechanics. The most unique bit is of course the swinging chains, which can send Mario flying quite fast if jumped off properly. There are also several portions of the course that make holding forward a bit trickier than they are in other speedruns. We get some obvious stuff like walking piranha plants, but also some less lethal things like a massive slope that can easily cause Mario to stop in his tracks if not jumped up correctly. All of this builds towards a potentially really good speedrun, but I do have a bit of an issue with it. While I obviously still like it seeing as it's so high on the list, it does feel a bit clunky at parts. The chains feel horribly inconsistent on if you'll get a big jump off of them or if you'll barely move anywhere. There's also a piranha plant at the very end that's pretty annoying to get past, so the main strategy is to use a Koopa shell. It's kinda cool that that's part of the strategy, but there's not really a way to pick up the shell fast without it feeling a bit awkward. Still, I would say this is a good challenge, just not one that I absolutely love. 26, Big Goomba Bounce Bash. And we've made it to our final appearance of 5-1. I think this is my favorite of the trilogy because it requires the most thought. The goal here is to get 18 1-ups using the giant enemies at the start of the course. Since giant Goombas clone themselves when killed, you're able to get quite a few bounces off of each one, but you may notice that it's not quite enough for the full 18 1-ups. Did Nintendo make an impossible challenge? Well, actually, we just need to use our heads a bit. So yes, for you guys it's impossible. You may notice that there are 2 Koopas at the end of the line, and from previous challenges, we know that Koopas will get up from their shells after a few seconds. So instead of saving them for last, you need to come up with a route that has them get hit in the middle so you can stall for enough time to hit them again once they rise up. That's actually a pretty cool extra layer to throw on here, and it's even a bit more difficult than it sounds due to the smaller Goombas giving Mario a lower jump height. It's not the most complex puzzle in the world, but it works quite well. 25, Slick Slopes and Bullet Bills. Compared to a lot of the other speedruns we've looked at so far, this feels a bit more complex with its layout. Unlike Swing to Action though, none of it feels clunky, it just feels like you have to execute a good route. I love the bit where you get to triple jump up a massive wall, along with the part where you have to avoid another Waddle Wing jump scare. It's also really nice that this part doesn't force you to wait like Rickety Sprint, which keeps the flow of the whole stage fast throughout. 24. Huck It Hustle. This is another unique challenge that requires both completing the main objective and murder. You have to run through this course while killing every single Huck It crab on the way. Unlike Waddle Wing Wipeout though, this has the advantage of being a time challenge. That means you can't really take your time here and have to actually add jumping onto the crabs to your route. Now none of them are really that far out of the way, but it definitely does change how you have to move through the course. It's honestly kinda sad that they didn't do more challenges like this, but as it stands, I find Huck It Hustle to be a really good execution of the idea. 23. Spine Coaster Coin Curse. Despite only being a 4-star difficulty, I find this to be one of the most stressful challenges of the bunch. That's partially because it's tied to another spine coaster, which means failing requires you to wait through the entire ride again. While that is mildly annoying, since the difficulty is strung throughout, I don't really feel the wait time is hard here. A lot of the coins can be quite hard to grab, especially while dodging all of this level's fuzzies. Those fuzzies don't just act as great obstacles, as they also add another bit of depth to the challenge. While normally you would have to collect every coin here to get a gold medal, the player is given a fire flower about halfway through the course. Since killing an enemy with a fireball spawns a coin, you can actually use this mechanic to kill fuzzies on the way to get a few extra coins. Due to how both they and the skull coaster move though, it is pretty hard to do that, but it feels so satisfying when you do manage to snag that extra coin. It makes it so even if you miss one on the way, there is still a bit of hope to get a gold medal right up until the very end. Had it not been for the fire flower, I think this would have placed a lot lower on my list, but I think it really does a good job making this a more engaging challenge despite it being sort of stuck on an auto-scroller. 22. Paratroopa Panic. This is sort of like a harder version of Stone Eye Koopas, where we have to try and get 8 1-ups by stalling long enough for the Koopas to get out of their shells. The reason this one is so much harder despite requiring less lives is because we no longer have a super acorn to work with. That means we have to be super smart about which Koopas we stomp on and where. The routing here is really the biggest part of the challenge, and coming up with an order that works is very satisfying. You probably could get away with just going down the line, but jumping on the Koopas out of order is both easier and feels smarter. 21. Wobble and Rock, and 20. Balancing Act. Here we have two of the most iconic challenges in the game. The goal of these is to stay alive on a wobble rock for as long as possible. These are super flimsy though, so make one wrong move and that can cause this thing to completely tip over. That is such a creative idea for a challenge, and I think these both execute it perfectly. Now the difference between the two is that in Wobble and Rock, you can't jump and have to survive for 30 seconds, whereas Balancing Act lets you jump but you have to survive for 60. Now Wobble and Rock is considered the harder challenge by the game, but honestly I kind of find Balancing Act to be more difficult. I think that's because it's more of an endurance test, so having to survive for twice as long makes it trickier for me. Wobble and Rock does lose out on being able to save a bit of time by jumping off at the end, but overall I still think I struggled with Balancing Act more, which makes me want to put it up higher. 19. Poison Swamp Scramble. This layout was just perfectly built to be speedrun. There are so many satisfying jumps to make throughout the entire course, like this triple jump through a bridge or this jump over the cliff. The second half is also very tense with a ton of moving blocks. Each jump feels risky to make as the blocks move out under Mario's feet. I even like trying to specifically jump on the blocks moving to the right here in order to gain a slight bit of speed. So overall, the main course is really fun to run through, but there is a pretty notable flaw. This level just ends with about 8 seconds of nearly empty space. Obviously that's because this challenge is just based on the level bridged over poisoned waters, but it feels very anticlimactic. I would definitely take this over having to pause in the middle though, so I think this still deserves to place quite high because of the many fantastic jumps here. 18. Airship 1-Up Rally. We have already reached our final 1-Up challenge. That does sort of make sense seeing as this category has the least amount of challenges, but I do think it's also sort of a sign that the 1-Up category was probably the weakest. Still, I do find this to be pretty intense. We have to try and collect 20 1-ups on this tiny portion of Soda Jungle's airship. To do that, we need to glide between basically every cannonball we can get. That's made so much harder because we also have to deal with this course's auto-scroll. Unlike most times where I feel like the auto-scroll is just there to slow us down, here is the exact opposite. It forces us to get as much as we can from the very little time we're given. That all comes to a head at the end where you have to chain several bounces off of this row of 4 cannons. I love ground pounding through them and instantly acorn boosting. It feels like a really good way to take advantage of this power-up's abilities. So for being easily the hardest one-up challenge, I think it deserves to be here. 17, Express Elevator. This is one of the most difficult challenges that requires a lot of routing to complete. You have to ride up the elevator from the course Red Hot Elevator Ride, but this time you have to make sure that absolutely nothing else touches the platform. That includes both enemies and coins. Problem is, this has a ton of both of those raining down throughout the course. So you have to try and dodge everything using the platform's motion controls while simultaneously collecting coins and freezing enemies. Freezing enemies in particular feels extra good as it requires some smart movement to get rid of them. There are just a lot of moving parts to this course, and it requires quite a bit of planning to do well. While I think that makes it fun due to how intense it is, there is also an element of mild frustration here because of it being tied to an auto-scroll. It's very hard to react to the obstacles without a pre-planned route, so most of the attempts at the start will just be sort of running your head against the wall until something works, which isn't always bad, but when you have to sit and wait on a slow-moving platform between each attempt, it can get a bit tedious. Still, I think this was a very strong challenge idea. 16, Mini Mountaineer. This is a super fun idea using the Mini Mushroom's ability to not kill enemies. The goal is to climb up this small mountain without touching the ground, and since this is a speed challenge, it's a lot more fun to me than something like Big Air at Sundown. That's also helped due to how many routing options you have here. The first half pretty much forces you to jump across the same bullets and paratroopas, but in the second half, you can use wall jumps to really go up however you like. That doesn't mean it's easy though, as Mario could easily send himself flying into a bullet instead. The unique concept, mixed with the creativity it allows for, definitely makes this challenge a highlight. 15, Multiple Returns. Somehow, Multiple returned. This is a harder version of the already really charming original. Now we're stuck on a lava raft, which means we have to deal with more fire-based enemies like blargs and lava bubbles. The Goombas are also made mini this time to make them a bit trickier to get rid of. And you'll especially want to make sure to get rid of them fast this time because the fog is coming, the fog is coming, the fog is coming, the fog is coming. The most diabolical part of the course is the ending, as there's a single Buzzy Beetle in the ceiling, which if you let drop down onto the platform, will kill the Monty Mole. The best strat is to bait it into the lava, but even then, you might accidentally cause Monty Mole to slip off instead. If you do manage to get past that, you reach the end of this pretty great challenge and get to celebrate with Monty Mole once more. 14, The Trial of Bullet Bill Hill. The routing on this challenge just feels very rewarding. You have to use these oddly placed bill blasters to jump over and under several chunks of land. Something about jumping over the void using bullet bill bounces is just perfectly satisfying, especially since you have to go under a ceiling and then back over a wall. Maybe this is a bit simpler than most of the other entries up this high, but I love coming back to this one. 13, Prickly Goomba's Coinless Run. This is definitely my favorite 3-star challenge in the game because I found this level to just be really fun to run through. The goal here is to not collect any coins, but you have to do so while not getting killed by the prickly Goombas, piranha plants, or fire bros. That leads to there being quite a few tight jumps, and the ice physics make a lot of them a bit scarier. At the same time though, I think that ice is why I like this course so much. This is pretty much a harder version of icicle skating with a lot more obstacles. Sure, we don't have to speedrun here since there's no timer, but it does feel really good to do that anyway. This is quite the long course, but feeling doesn't get annoying since the run back is fun for me pretty much every time. I do think I would have placed this higher if there was a timer, since waiting does make certain parts a bit too easy, but as it is, this is really fun to go back to. Oh yeah, also be very careful of the Goomba bridge. 12, The Haunted Propeller. The propeller suit is one of my favorite power-ups, so of course I was gonna like a speedrun challenge using it. This sort of expands on the concept seen in the Boo Ballet challenges, as we now have much trickier jumps through Boo rings. I already enjoyed just running through these rings normally, but adding the propeller's boost to the mix makes it even better. It feels like you have a lot more control over your speed this time, since those other challenges pretty much just had you hold right the entire time. Here, you can really use a mix of the propeller boost and drill to speed up your journey through the course. The ending especially highlights just how fun this can be with the Boo rings overlapping each other. It's a shame that this is the only propeller suit challenge, but at least it's a great one. 11, 200 Clifftop Coins. This has probably the largest original course out of any of these challenges, which just means it doesn't show up at all in the main game. The goal here is to collect all 200 coins, who could have guessed, and reach the flag before the timer expires. Due to just how big this course is though, that's actually not a very easy task. The main way you'll be making your way up this cliff is by wall jumping, and they do a great job making this extremely intense. You have to jump past all sorts of enemies like piranha plants, spike tops, fuzzies, and skewers. Since coins line both sides of pretty much every wall, you're forced to make some pretty risky jumps if you want to reach the golden time. The fuzzy was especially scary for me since you have to jump into its path. I just found this to be very well designed around the wall jump mechanics, and even though this is a longer challenge, it doesn't feel like it overstays its welcome because of how intense it is. 10, No Cash Dash. This speedrun level requires you to get through the course without picking up any coins. Now it could be Many debated that this should be a coin challenge, but there is a timer, so you're alright. That timer really does add a lot to this level too, as it makes each jump feel so much scarier than it would have been otherwise if we were allowed to take our time. A lot of the coins are once again placed at jumps, and the spikes dotted around the course do a good job as obstacles. Many of the jumps require you to weave through different elements of the course, and doing that fast is just a ton of fun. Really happy that they made the decision to combine this one with a timer. 9. Flippers Crossing. While it's not the hardest speedrun challenge, man did they just make everything line up here in such a satisfying way. Due to the way both the crates and the flippers move, you need to be smart with how you run through the course. There are several points where you can get tripped up due to how the flippers jump, so you have to make sure you have a good route in mind while going in here. The flippers at the end is especially evil. It's super easy to jump into him without thinking. My favorite element though would have to be the crates because they just move in such an interesting way. They'll wobble and sink based on weight, which opens up for some really fun strats here. My favorite is this part where you barely sneak under a flipperist jumping while staying grounded. It feels so smart to pull that off. While certainly not the hardest challenge in the world, I do have a ton of fun revisiting this one. 8. Seriously? Fire, bro.
Say that again?
This is a more difficult version of the very first special challenge. I already liked the 2 Fire Bro version, so upping that up to 4 makes it exponentially better. The randomness plays an even bigger part here, making each run feel unique. Sometimes the pattern can be really rough, which makes it feel even better when you somehow manage to survive. Honestly, I kinda wish they didn't have a timer here and just let you go endlessly until you die. Challenges like this and Balancing Act would be pretty fun to grind out high scores on outside of just going for gold medals. But what we do have in the game is still a pretty fun jumping challenge. 7. Screw Top It Up. In my 2D Mario ranking, I mentioned that I really love levels that utilize these screw top elements. I don't blame you if you forgot that, there was a lot of content to remember. The reason being that I love trying to get through their levels while spinning on them as little as possible. That's pretty much the entire focus of this speedrun. You have to use the screw tops to move several of the platforms, so the challenge comes from minimizing how much you have to spin on them in order to continue going up the tower. In order to get gold here, you have to make some pretty tricky jumps, including a lot of very tight wall jumps. Especially this one near the very end, where you have to just barely cling onto the corner of the ceiling to make it up. This is placed as the final time attack challenge in the menu, and I certainly think it earns the title of being the hardest in the game. I do still have another time challenge I like more, but this was a really strong showing. 6. Castle Coin Bypass. Here we have another challenge about not collecting coins, but this time the jumps are absolutely brutal. You have to use a lot of swinging platforms here, but the problem is that most of them are filled to the brim with coins in the most diabolical spots. You really need to take full advantage of the platform swinging so that the coins can move out from underneath you. The challenge does not let up at all throughout the entire thing, as pretty much every jump here is scary. Even being patient like a lot of the other no coin challenges really doesn't make a difference in how tight each of the jumps are. Each part of this lines up brilliantly to be an absolutely evil course, and that just makes it all the better when you finally do survive it. 5. Castle Crawl. Pendulum Castle is probably the game's hardest course, so basing a challenge around it was bound to make it hard as well. Now we have to make our way through this already tricky course without the ability to run. That makes every single obstacle so much more stressful. The ground being donut blocks is scarier, the bony beetles are scarier, and of course, the pendulums are a big pain as well. You have to be very smart with how you move through the course, really timing out all of your jumps to sync up with the pendulums and bony beetles. The end also has a ton of jumps with only one block to land on, which definitely doesn't help with the stress. Overall, this was just a really great and scary idea for a challenge. Thank goodness this didn't have any other obstacles to worry about. 4. Attack of the Bob-ombs. This is my favorite 4-star mission, as only those with 3000 IQ can solve it. This is another coin challenge that has us trying to collect all of the coins as fast as we can, and in order to get a gold medal, we need a time of under 50 seconds. Unfortunately, all of the coins are blocked behind bricks, so we have to use bob-ombs coming out of pipes to blow them up. Problem being that this timer is pretty strict, so you have to be smart with all of your placements while still moving quick. Also, if you're used to Mario Maker physics, you're gonna have an even harder time since you can't duck down to place something in front of you. That means you also have to space your throws correctly, which just adds another layer to the challenge. I love how creative you can be here, and it feels so good coming up with your own route and executing it well. I also love how the bombs can act as obstacles too by filling up where you need to go to collect the coins. So I think they really managed to cram a lot into this small space, easily deserving of the number 4 spot on this list. 3. Cashless Castle Crawl. Oh no! Yup, this is the same as the last castle crawl, but now you can't collect any coins. Safe to say that this is obviously much harder. You're now even more limited on where you can go, so even if you got pretty good at getting through the first one, this version is a whole other beast. Some might say it's repetitive to have two similar challenges like this, but I'm honestly fine with it because of how much trickier this one is compared to the original. So all that to say, I think this definitely deserves the crown as my favorite special challenge. Okay, it probably should have been a coin challenge, but 2. Stone Slide Tower Climb. If you remember what I said about our last speedrun level, this is basically just that, but a little bit better. We once again get a big focus on the screw tops, but due to how this course is designed, you can get a lot more creative in avoiding them entirely. There's a lot of wall jumping that can be done here, and it's all pretty much required to get a gold. Some of these you really have to think outside the box for, and I like how that forces you to look at the stage in a new light. I especially like this difficult jump into the warp pipe near the middle. Something about having to hit your head on this tiny surface makes it feel a whole lot harder. There are even a ton of small optimizations you can make here, like wall jumping out of the warp pipe or even throwing in a few ground pound cancels. That ending too is very tense, as you have to use the screw top in order to move the blocks, but to go fast you have to open it a very small amount, which makes getting crushed right at the end a scary possibility. But the cherry on top of this whole challenge is that my goat Drybones gets a big focus throughout. Hopefully this does make up for me putting the other Drybones challenge a bit low. This is easily my favorite speedrun challenge of the bunch just due to how much complex movement is needed here. 1. Don't touch anything. I don't think it's a surprise to almost anyone to see this at number 1, as this is often considered the most difficult challenge in the game. Not to me though.
Leave me alone!
As this is a coin challenge, the main idea here is that you can't collect any. But the title doesn't say don't touch coins, it says don't touch anything, so you're also banned from touching any enemies. That's particularly annoying because of all the lakitus that follow you here, making it so that you can't really take your time. That wouldn't be too bad if it weren't for the fact that the coin placements here are evil. We have to jump across several massive moving blocks, all of which are completely covered in coins. There is a small 1 block gap between the coins and the ground, so small Mario can fit, but even being a little off means you're gonna collect a coin by mistake. That's made even worse because you have to jump up most of these blocks, so you have to have very precise control over Mario's jump height here. This all combines to make an absolutely brutal challenge that I love a lot. Every time you make a jump into that tiny gap, it feels super good, and finally getting a run where all the jumps line up is incredibly satisfying. What's also great is that there's not really a ton of waiting in this course. That makes each attempt feel pretty quick, so even if you keep failing, it doesn't get too frustrating. I don't think I would quite call this the hardest challenge myself, but this is still definitely up there. So for being a very hard, but simultaneously very fun challenge, I think Don't Touch Anything deserves a crown as the best challenge in New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. But anyways, that's it for this video. Do you love Fuzzy Alert and hate me for skipping over the boost challenges? Buy me a Wii U gamepad, mine's broken. Let me know in the comments. I had so much fun replaying this mode for this video, and I highly suggest you all check it out if you haven't already. I'm really hoping Wonders DLC has at least a few challenges on a similar difficulty level as these, but we'll probably see soon enough when I decide to make a ranking of all of those. Also, as of me recording this, we now know that there's going to be 74 challenges in that mode, so there's going to be even more than there were in this video. But anyway, before I go, I've got to thank my members being Extreme5026, Maidzio2, Adept Tuna, Daniel Castillo 1262, Aaron 0729, Anton 3669, Smuggy, Guy 112, Danny Gaming Central, Young Smoky VP7, Zach Pro, Flame 765, Peanut Brown of Gallery, Corposaurus, BFDI Macaron, Stephen Hafner, Bell Slimes, Night Vision 101, PDX, Wilbur, Jenny, Mogo Mogo Boat, Stuffy Ant, Rich Dude 29, Jeho Jim, Linhard von Hevering, Magnus and Larslot, Trifector, Tibby, Hippopotamus, Levi Strux, Nuclear, Cassie Channel, Blessed Tiger, Wyatt Derpy, Yanni the Duck, Trader Mo, Mevins 2001, Display Changer, B Major 2003, Sir Musty, Belandor, Cinder CC, Jade Avery, Thicky Reiki, Ingenio TM, CW McCain, Tesseract, JubeTube, Jameson Pageson, Z Frost Keep, and Christian Flattery Sequel Edition. But anyways, dry bones for Smash, and I'll see you guys next time.